Hello and welcome to pmblounge.com. This is Lounge Fever where we try to tackle your burning questions. Question for the day: do we collect requirements in iterative model? Now, we've discussed so much about collecting requirements. There are so many tools and techniques to use. The entire process is one of the most important processes. I've said that many times already, that collect requirements is one of the most important processes in project management. Now, if your projects follow an iterative model, right? You're not following the waterfall model. If you're following the waterfall model, how it works is you collect all the requirements at once, you get a sign off on the requirements, and then you start building your project. Then you go into designing and coding and whatnot. How iterative model works is you plan one iteration, small set of requirements, and you move ahead with designing, coding, testing, whatever. You come back in the next iteration, you build on top of the previous iteration that is already done, and you keep on doing iterations one after the other until the project is complete. So that's the iterative model for you. And we have already covered iterative model. I'll share certain links in the description, the entire playlist if I can find, or if I find just the video, I'll share that in the description for sure. So you can kind of refresh your memory on what iterative model is. But then if you're following iterative model, do you need to perform collect requirements? It's a very exhaustive process. I'll share the links to what all we have discussed in collect requirements already over here at PMP Lounge. So I'll share the link to that, and it's an exhaustive process. So do you need to do that? Do you have to collect requirements if you're following iterative model? So a short answer to that is yes. Yes, you have to collect requirements even if you are delivering a project using the iterative model. So you need to understand that iterative projects, if you're doing a project in following the iterative model, it doesn't necessarily mean that you jump right into coding without planning the scope and understanding what the requirements are. You cannot start off the project and go right into coding. You have to understand what the scope is. You have to understand what the requirements are. And that is the reason collect requirements is absolutely required. Now, scope needs to be planned for each iteration. Like I mentioned earlier, there will be several iterations in the same project, right? In the iterative model. And for each iteration, you have to plan out on the scope, what the scope is going to be. Other than that, for the uninitiated, right? If you're new, you need to understand that the more you know upfront, right? The more you know upfront about your project, about the requirements, about the scope, the easier it is to plan for the project. So it doesn't really matter if you're doing a project in iteration model, you're following the iterative model in iterations, right? Or you're following the waterfall model, agile, whatever that you're doing. The more that you know about the project upfront, the better it is going to be, the easier it is going to be to plan out for your project. So as simple as that, you have to know the requirements to be able to deliver uh, successfully, right? So be it iterative model, be it any other model, you have to collect requirements. And lastly, iterations are generally smaller, right? If you compare a waterfall model project and an iterative model project, you'll understand that a waterfall will have this big timeline of 6 months, 8 months, year, 2 years, right? While iterative, a project that is following the iterative model might actually be as big as waterfall model, but then you will go through collecting requirements phase a lot of times in each iteration, right? So that is why your collect requirements phase, right? Your collect requirements process, if you're following the iterative model, is going to be much smaller as compared to a project that is following the waterfall model. And that is the reason why the process of collect requirements should be fairly quick as compared to a project that is following the waterfall model. But it can be fairly quick, but it doesn't really mean that you can skip it altogether. You have to collect requirements for each phase. You have to collect requirements for each phase or iteration, whatever you want to call it. And that is the reason why you cannot skip the collect requirements process, even if you're doing a project in iterative model. So that is all that we had in this video. Subscribe to this YouTube channel if you haven't done so already. Check us out on our social media, facebook.com/pmplounge and twitter.com/pmplounge. Do send in your queries at pmplounge@gmail.com. We'll definitely respond or try to make a video on them. And as always, do check out the website pmplounge.com, your number one free resource for PMP certification and project management industry information. Thank you.